Well, some are calling it a stunning escalation in the standoff over Iran's nuclear ambitions. U.S. bombers struck 3 Iranian nuclear facilities in a precision campaign in Fordo, Esfahan, and Natanz. The administration had signaled it wasn't interested in nation building, but is that still true following President Trump's latest comments? I spoke with Dr. Asaf Romirowsky, the executive director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, about it all. Iran's proxies in Iraq and Syria have been largely decimated. Hezbollah has taken tremendous hits. But people forget about Lebanon and Yemen, and the Houthis still have some power. And then there are all these various Iran-backed militias that have a tremendous amount of power as well. And Iran has advantages over the United States and other traditional large global powers in exerting asymmetric force. Is that still a threat?
So let's contextualize it. I mean, you mentioned several groups out there that need to be looked at very carefully and very closely. The differences between the Iranian proxies and Iran itself is their nuclear capability. As far as the history of the Middle East goes, this is, the threat of Iran going nuclear, and what we've been dealing with now is, again, nuclearizing the Middle East. The concerns were all along as far as potentially smuggling dirty bombs to Hezbollah, Hamas, and other groups. And to your point exactly, had Hezbollah not been devastated in the pager operation, you would have seen ballistic missiles coming in. They would have joined the party immediately once Israel began their attack 10 days ago.
Let's talk about the snapback sanctions with the JCPOA, and on the other side, a couple of economic levers that Iran could pull by, for example, closing the Strait of Hormuz, which 20% of the world's oil goes through that strait, and that could have significant effects on inflation, the world economy, even if it were just a brief closure. Who do you think has the greater economic lever there?
The majority of the import-export in that area actually are the Chinese and India. And so from our perspective, it's only, it's less because of our oil production here in the States. And so, again, China being a patron and an ally of Iran, one needs to consider where they come into all of this. The greater concerns that I have as it relates to threats against the United States is the fact that we have about 45,000 troops in the area, as far as and military bases in the area that could potentially be targets now with Iran, which is something to look at going forward. But I think that Khamenei clearly got a message that the United States is serious about this.
The IAEA's report was not necessarily that we've known about the 60% uranium enrichment level for X period of time. It was, now we're telling you about it. And that happened in the midst of these diplomatic negotiations that were happening. Did it narrow the diplomatic space and sort of harden, in some ways, the coercive credibility of the Trump administration for having to deliver on a pre-existing red line? Was the insertion of that report the impetus, the thing that expedited this entire operation? And in the absence of the report, would we be here today with these 3 nuclear sites bombed?
I think we'd still be here. I mean, I think it was helpful, but like I said, I think that the amount of intelligence that has been, and again, if you look at, to my earlier point, the fact that this entire operation was a shared intelligence operation militarily and intelligence-wise between the United States and Israel, it was not the only evidence that the administration had to go off on in order to do this, what they did. Obviously, it helped, but the mounting evidence that we've had, not to mention the fact, look, the fact that the Israelis had intel, boots on the ground, Mossad agents, they had a drone operation. None of this happened overnight. I mean, this takes years in the planning, and the fact that the targets that the Israelis chose, surgically tackling the heads of the scientists responsible for the program, the military cabinet, the individual was responsible for continuing and furthering the program as to where it's gotten. I mean, the evidence was there. This only helped.
And Iran obviously sounding off in an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Iran's UN ambassador Amir Iravani said that the U.S. decided to destroy diplomacy.